Good evening. It's 6 o'clock. It's 6 o'clock and we are all here to take part in the full council of the Derbyshire Dales District Council on Thursday the 26th of September. There's me. Thought it was Boxing Day, sorry. But 26th of September. I'm Steve Wayne and I'm the chair, and I'd like to welcome everybody to the meeting. We're not planned any fire drill, so we're not going to hopefully be dashing out of that door behind you, but I would point you in direction of the two messages, one above my head and one over there, about the how we will exit the building if the alarm goes off. There's also, I must warn people about the CCTV. This is being recorded, and if any of the members of the public don't want their details, if you go and see Lucy at the end of the table, then she can explain how your details can be, images can be altered. So I'd just like to say, here with me on the table is Paul Wilson, the Chief Executive. Next to Paul is the Peter Slack, the Civic Chair. To my left is Kerry France, the Solicitor and Legal Services Manager, who's hopefully going to keep us all legal and informed throughout the meeting. In front is Steve Capes, the Director of Place, Amanda Goodwill, the Environmental Health Manager, Karen Henriksen, the Director of Resources, Rob Coggins, also he's the Director of Housing. At the end of the table is Lucy Harrison from the Democratic Services, and making sure we're all looking good on film is Jim Fern, the Communications and Marketing Manager. So we'll just move to the first item on the agenda, which is apologies for absence. Lucy, can you tell us who's not here, please?
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillors Archer, Burton, Chapman, Gretrix, Peacock, Ripton and Whitehead.
Thank you very much. Now we move on to item 2, which is public participation. And we have two speakers this evening. The first one is Councillor Joe Wildgoose from Roseley Parish Council, who wishes to make a statement. You have 3 minutes, and ready when you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I've come to speak to this full council meeting tonight to make sure that as many of you as possible are aware of the problems with the traveller consultation that is just about to come to an end and has so many local people concerned. The selection of the 6 shortlisted sites being considered is based on a matrix of information that is just plain wrong. Peter Slack stood up at the recent Middleton by Worksworth public meeting and said that the land being considered there as a traveller site is contaminated. The matrix said the land is not contaminated, although I find it hard to understand why Councillor Slack, as a member of the Gypsy and Traveller Working Group, allowed this matrix to be circulated with such inaccurate information. We must believe what he told members of his ward in a public arena. Also, this site is apparently reserved for a new graveyard from next year, which the council is well aware of, so it should never have been on the list in the first place. Was any kind of due diligence done on this matrix before it was issued, or has the council just included Middleton by Worksworth as padding to make it seem like there is genuine selection process, when in fact the outcome is a foregone conclusion? With regard to the car park at Roseley, the size of the site is completely inaccurate on the matrix, listed as 1/3 bigger than admitted by Robert Coggins. However, even he is using outdated information. After 60 years of neglect and nature encroachment, the site is actually half the size listed on the matrix. The site needs to be measured in person by a qualified individual, unless the council is planning to cut down healthy, mature trees for a temporary traveller site. Also, the car park at Roseley is within 100 metres of 5 houses and a pub with managers and guest accommodation, not the 2 listed on the matrix. The matrix also states that using the site for travellers would not result in a level of traffic generation which is inappropriate for roads in the area. If any of you have been stuck in the regular gridlock on Chatsworth Road in Roseley, you will know that the displacement of cars from a heavily used car park onto that road will cause even more chaos. The site is dark and damp and without proper surfacing. Any time it rains, huge puddles of water form and linger for days afterwards. Nature has encroached on all sides and there are steep, unsafe banks down to the river and to the road, with no fencing to protect the children and the vulnerable adult in this traveller family. How can the site provide adequate levels of privacy and residential amenity, as the matrix states, when the travellers have left both times they have been put there before because it is so awful. The matrix also states at Roseley there is a water standpipe, unknown if functional. I am confused by this, considering the fact that the council replaced this water pipe and tap before the consultation even started. When challenged, the work done was first denied, but then Vicky Winfield verbally admitted repairs have been made. Why repair a water tap on a car park before the consultation has even started, unless the intention has been to use Roseley all along? The matrix needs to be corrected and reissued before the Community and Environment Committee sees any information from the consultation. It is inaccurate, misleading and not fit for its purpose. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The second speaker is Kerry Andrews from the Level Centre, who wishes to make a statement. Kerry, you've got 3 minutes. Thank you.
24% of the population identifies as disabled.
Can you just put your microphone on, please?
I'm so sorry.
I'll start again, but yeah, okay. Yeah, go on again, thanks.
24% of the UK population identifies as disabled. It's the largest minority group in the UK. Can I ask everyone in this room if you know somebody who identifies as disabled? They might be deaf, blind, have a physical or learning disability, be autistic or neurodivergent, have a hidden disability or chronic illness. Please raise your hand if you know someone that identifies like that. So a good proportion of the room, I find it hard to believe that many hands weren't raised there. Some people in the room know somebody who identifies as disabled. Level works with people with additional needs, like the people some of you know in this room. Travelling by public transport is not an option for many disabled people. They rely on cars and parking and familiar environments. Our participants and visitors come to Level because they feel safe. Our work transforms lives through the arts. A parent said, "My son felt at ease to come to Level and he would ask, 'Mum, can we go early?' The friendship group that he has formed has given him the confidence to start alternative provision." We were disappointed that the September public meeting for Old Station Close car park traveller site took place on a Friday evening. We'd been requesting the meeting date since July. Announcing the date in September made it difficult to attend. The agenda was only shared 24 hours in advance. Many parents and carers struggled to find carers on a Friday night to attend. The consultation questionnaire has not been accessible for many, especially our learning disabled users. The entire process has been from an ableist approach, and the shortlisting of the proposed sites has not taken into consideration the widened needs of vulnerable users or an equality impact assessment. Whilst we understand that travellers need a home, disabled people also need vital services that support well-being and prevent isolation. Whilst we fully support the council not discriminating against the community, this cannot be at the expense of discriminating against another vulnerable group. The council should focus the investment and time in securing a suitable permanent traveller site elsewhere, which is a fair solution for all. I'd requested minutes and paperwork related to all discussions that took place in deciding how the 31 sites were shortlisted to 6 proposed sites. The working group pointed me in the direction of the inaccurate ARC matrix. Rob Coggins sent me a copy of draft minutes from a July meeting. I'd requested to see all documentation on how the Gypsy and Traveller Working Group took their decision to recommend these sites, and I'm not satisfied with the information supplied. It lacks transparency. It is not clear on the next stage of evaluating the consultation process, and can see that the October Community Environment and Local Plan meetings have been cancelled. The car park is our fire evacuation point. There is nowhere else suitable for a safe meeting point this side of the A6 to choose as an alternative. No explanation has been provided as to where people who currently use the car park could park safely on this side of the A6 if the resource was taken away. Old Station Close car park and road is already at capacity on a daily basis. There's no other public parking available in Roseley. Beneficiaries rely on convenient parking due to mobility issues, making nearby parking essential for participation. Without this, accessing Level services may become challenging or impossible. This could strain resources and affects people's well-being, resulting in more impact on other council services. Level brings significant investment into Derbyshire Dales from a range of national stakeholders who support good causes, including National Lottery, Reaching Communities Fund and Arts Council England. When Level was granted planning permission, the Highways and Parking team outlined that Old Station car park could be used as additional parking. Permission to build Level would not have been granted based on Level just having 3 parking bays, of which 2 are disabled. We hope the council understands the significant impact the loss of Old Station Close car park would have on disabled residents across Derbyshire and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you both for coming and speaking. Thank you. We now move on to number 3, which is interests. And there have been some emails going about, and in relation to the motion that is likely to be put forward in a bit. So I just want to read this out. Who just received this, so if you could listen in. Members, a number of enquiries have been received from members as to whether or not members need to declare an interest in this matter. I've sought the advice of the Deputy Monitoring Officer on this point. The advice is that for the avoidance of doubt, those members eligible to payment of winter fuel allowance may have a disclosable pecuniary interest in that this item which needs to be declared, In addition, a dispensation is required from the Deputy Monitoring Officer in order for any such members to participate and vote on the item. As a number of members have already declared an interest to the Deputy Monitoring Officer, a dispensation has been granted accordingly for those members. I will ask the Deputy Monitoring Officer to read out the list of those names of who have declared an interest in this item to date. So Kerry's going to read that out, but also, could any members eligible for the receipt of the winter fuel allowance who have not yet declared an interest in this matter and granted a dispensation, please indicate after Kerry has spoken, and the Deputy Monitor Officer will grant them dispensation accordingly in order to allow those members to participate and vote on this item. What I've tried to do is be as fair as possible with this. So, Kerry, can you just give those names of the people that you've already given dispensation to?
Yeah, just to confirm, those members that have declared an interest to me, and I have granted them a dispensation, and this is in alphabetical order. We have Councillor Sue Burford, Councillor Martin Burford, Councillor Bob Butcher, Councillor Peter Dobbs, Councillor Steve Flitter, Councillor Marilyn Franks, Councillor Sue Hobson, Councillor Joanne Linthwaite, and Councillor Peter O'Brien. Thank you, Chair.
Right. So, we'll say again, any members that wish to apply? Councillor Hughes?
Thank you, Chair. I have a disclosable pecuniary interest, but I do not want this, to have a dispensation. Thank you, because I think this is just political manoeuvring.
Thank you. Councillor Slack?
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't get hold of Kerry. Oh, sorry, I didn't get hold of Kerry, but I want a dispensation as well.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Slack. And I mean, the reasons why I gave a dispensation to the 9 councillors already mentioned was that I believe that granting the dispensation is in the interest of the people living in the council area.
Yeah.
So in this instance, then yes, Councillor Slack, you grant a dispensation.
Councillor Walker?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'd like to be excused as well due to my status. Thank you.
Right, are there any... Councillor Nash?
I think I'd just like some advice. I'm not currently eligible, but I will be before the end of the winter. Do I need to declare an interest?
I would say no.
I thought you were going to say before the end of the week there. In that instance, no. It's as today stands. So no. My advice would be no, because you're voting on it today.
And you've surprised me. But are there any other people who wish to declare an interest and ask for a dispensation? No. That's good, thank you very much. We now move on to, the Chair's announcements. Everybody should have a list of... everybody should have a list of the Chair's announcements, and it looks like Councillor Slack's been busy again, gallivanting around the district. So that will go on to the that'll go on to the minutes of the meeting. So, Councillor Slack, thank you very much for what you've done, and we'll move on to the committees, and we're being asked to receive the non-exempt minutes of the committees shown below. We're being asked to receive these. So it's the non-exempt minutes for the Local Plan Subcommittee of the 16th of July, the Governance and Resources Committee of the 18th of July, Community and Environment Committee of the 22nd of July, Full Council on the 25th of July, Community and Environment Committee on the 30th of July, the Planning Committee on the 13th of August, and the Community and Environment Committee on the 12th of September. Everybody should have had an opportunity to see the minute book. Would anybody like to move that these are received, please? Councillor Buttle, and seconded by Councillor Buckler. Thank you. Now we'll all go to a vote on that. All those in favour of receiving these minutes? Any against? Any abstentions? That's moved unanimously. Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll move on to questions now, which is item 6 on the agenda. Questions from members who have given due notice. The first question is from Councillor Hobson to the Council Leader, Councillor Flitter. Councillor Hobson, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to, they've gone now, but the 2 residents from the Parish Council and from Level Centre who attended this evening. My question is, does the Leader of the Council accept that for the Council to run 2 important consultations over the summer holiday period against local government guidelines was a poor decision, and the inability of Derbyshire Dales District Council staff to respond to legitimate questions and emails over this period shows a complete disregard for the views of our communities? Thank you.
Councillor Flitter.
Thank you, Chair. The public consultation concerning temporary traveller sites will have lasted 8 weeks when the consultation ends on the 29th of September. The car park review involves 3 stages of consultation. Multiple channels have been made available, including a dedicated email box, consultation meetings and online surveys. The timescale for the surveys reflect the need to protect these important areas of work and provide sufficient time for residents to give their views through different methods. Officers have worked very hard to respond to many requests from residents and businesses for more information. With regards to the car park consultation, it was carried out over a 6-week period and was advised through the parish and town council networks, on social media, circulated to people that have signed up to the council's e-newsletter, and on the council's website, with posters were erected in every car park. As a result of that, 1,947 responses to the consultation, and we feel that is a very good representation. As far as I'm aware, officers have responded to all emails and questions in a timely manner. But if Councillor Hobson can provide specific details where she feels that this has not happened, then we will look into that.
Councillor Hobson,
Thank you for that, Councillor Flitter. I've got a supplementary. I attended all 5 traveller site meetings. Does the Leader of the Council accept that it was a mistake not to film the traveller site meetings and to make the recordings available to view at a later stage, so that those members of the Gypsy and Traveller Working Group and all other councillors who could not attend, as well as the traveller families, residents, businesses and other interested parties, such as the Level Centre, could see the meetings at a later stage, rather than wait for the notes of the meetings, which are still not available? Thank you.
Councillor Flitter.
No, I don't take that view, quite honestly. I think the meetings went very well. Members of the public were given the opportunity to air their views on every occasion. The members that attended gave their responses as for members of the community, and I think you've had a statement tonight that you have to declare whether anybody wishes to be filmed or not, and that could have made an awful problem, because if somebody didn't want it, then we couldn't do it. I don't take that argument, and I think both of these reviews and public consultation have gone very well, and we're very pleased with them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flitter.
The second question is from Councillor Gareth G. A question to Councillor Flitter. Thank you. Councillor G.
Thank you very much. Does the Leader of the Council agree the new Labour government proposals on the NPPF, which is the National Planning Policy Framework, which demand Derbyshire Dales District Council to uplift the housing targets in its local plan from 217 to 571 houses per year over 15 years, are totally inappropriate, unacceptable and undeliverable? The Conservative group on this council would like reassurance the council leader is joined with us entirely against Labour policies which will lead to devastating, unrepairable, lasting damage to our communities in Derbyshire Dales.
Thank you, Councillor G. Councillor Flitter.
As Councillor G will be aware, the proposed revisions to the NPPF were considered at the Community and Environment Committee on the 12th of September 2024. The potential increase of housing requirements was discussed and a response to the government was agreed. It was agreed unanimously by the Community and Environment Committee. That agreed response was submitted to the Secretary of State on the 24th September. Residential development on the scale identified in the proposed NPPF would, it is clear, create a challenge for us all at the District Council, as it would be at such a greater scale than we've ever seen before in the Derbyshire Dales. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor G. Thank you, Councillor Flitter. The final question comes from Councillor Dermot Murphy, a question to Councillor Steve Flitter. Councillor Murphy, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Could Councillor Flitter please advise the Council why it has taken in excess of 100 days to deal with the complaint raised by Sarah Dines? Many interested residents are concerned that such an important complaint has been ignored for so long. Derbyshire Dales District Council is under the microscope and needs to be seen answering such a complaint in a timely manner in accordance with our detailed protocols. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Flitter.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The Council always strives to process complaints in a timely manner. The complaint submitted by Ms Dines was intricate and an explanation was given that it would take some time to consider the matter raised. Unfortunately, the assessment of this complaint coincided with a number of other events which impacted upon our ability to respond, not least the organisation of a general election. Whilst it is acknowledged that it has taken longer to consider this complaint than is desirable, it has now been concluded and Ms Dines has been informed of the decision made by the Deputy Monitoring Officer in accordance with the Council's complaint procedure. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Murphy, do you have a supplementary?
No, just thank you, Councillor Flitter.
Thank you very much, Councillor Murphy and Councillor Flitter. We now move on to number 7, which is a proposal of a notice of motion from Councillor Bond. Two things. Having read this, I did ask the Chief Executive if he would arrange for some documentation to be... Yeah, okay. One person, yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Because you didn't ask for dispensation, it's a red card, I'm afraid. I'm going at what the monitoring officer said. Right, we'll move on to item 7, a proposal of a notice of motion from Councillor Bond. I asked the Chief Executive if, because it all hinges on what we do as a council and what we are being asked to do as a council, so you should have had some paper on your desk. It starts item 7, proposal note, additional information. So if you would like to read that. And Councillor Bond has also submitted an amended version of his motion onto the table, and if you want to see that. Councillor Bond, would you like to put forward your motion, please? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just want to spend a couple of minutes just outlining the context of this. For myself, I resist all notions that this is a political manoeuvring, and as was stated earlier, I'm sad that it should be mentioned in that context. Really what we're trying to do is to put forward the best interests of pensioners living in our council area, and their interests should be of primary concern at this time. Even the Labour Party at their conference had a healthy debate and a vote, and I uphold and applaud that kind of healthy debate. Whenever a debate takes place in a public arena on issues like this, we can only all benefit from the information that comes out. I am tabling an amendment, Chair, to the notice of motion on the basis that some discussion or decision making may get hung up on the action points that I originally suggested in items 1 to 6 contained in the original notice of motion. I've therefore made these actions as actions that could be included in a strategic action plan rather than must be included. I'm also very grateful for the additional information provided by council members relevant to the proposed motion, and my apologies to officers, as I should have taken time personally to ask the question about what is already being actioned. Believe me, I did not assume that nothing was being done. I just want to say that we are told during the last few weeks, when this has been a hot topic about the winter fuel allowance, that an estimated 880,000 pensioners across the UK are eligible households are not claiming pension credits, with up to £1.7 billion of available pension credit going unclaimed and therefore not reaching the poorest pensioners. Indeed, a headline in the Derby Times this week noted by a city councillor stated that there was £9 million of unclaimed pension credits going across the city, and that the councillor involved stated that they would be doing everything they can to help people take up these benefits, these credits. Government has increasingly recognised the problem of low uptake of pension credit. The claim rate has been about 60% traditionally. And certainly back in 2022, the Chancellor referenced it when announcing a cost of living emergency payment, saying that the low uptake of the benefit meant that it was difficult to effectively target support to older people in financial hardship through pension credits. Sadly, even though this issue of low uptake has been recognised, governments and this government has chosen to cut the number of people receiving the winter fuel allowance. The average pension credit share and claim for those already in receipt is £3,900, which is £76.20 per week. Although for new claimants, the figure is likely to be more like £51 a week, and people can claim online or they can claim by phoning the 0800 991 1234 number. Martin Lewis has referenced the issue of pension credits, and he says this: it's a tragedy that up to 1 million low-income pensioners who've paid into the system for years are missing out on what can be a crucial financial top-up, and even those only due threepence, says Martin, from it should still claim, as pension credit is the key gateway benefit that opens the door to many other entitlements, including the remaining £600 cost of living support, council tax reductions, free TV licences if aged over 75, dental and optical support and more. Any single pensioner earning under roughly £220 a week or pension couple earning under £320 should check online or call the pension credit helpline just in case they may be eligible. So this motion, Chair, if passed, would direct the Council to take action on behalf of pensioners affected by the winter fuel payment changes. Thank you, Chair.
Do you want to actually say what your motion is?
Well, do you want me to read it all the way through, Chair? Would that be helpful, or would it be too verbose?
I think it might be, it's whether everybody's read it, but I think you should put the motion for the benefit of those who may be watching.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'll do my best. This council notes with concern the recent changes to the winter fuel payment eligibility criteria, which now requires pensioners to not only have reached state pension age, but also to be in receipt of a qualifying means-tested benefit to receive support. These changes will disproportionately affect pensioners in rural areas like Derbyshire, many of whom face fuel poverty and may struggle to navigate the complexities of means testing. This council believes that all pensioners should be supported through the winter months to ensure they are not left cold or forced to choose between heating and other essentials. Furthermore, we acknowledge that many pensioners do not claim benefits due to difficulties with the application process or lack of awareness, leaving them particularly vulnerable to the effects of these cuts. This council calls on government to reconsider its decision to cut the winter fuel payment and requests the Derbyshire MPs advocate for the full reinstatement of its vital support. This council resolves to publish a pension credit uptake strategic action plan for the next 5 years in consultation with key stakeholders. The strategic action plan should contain both short and long-term actions to raise the uptake of pension credit and set out clear criteria for success. These actions could include advocacy, formally lobbying Derbyshire MPs and the government to reconsider the changes to the winter fuel payment, highlighting the impact on pensioners in rural areas like Derbyshire. 2. Provide local support, exploring the feasibility of establishing a local emergency fund or grant scheme to assist pensioners ineligible for the winter fuel payment but still in need of support during the winter months. 3. Partnerships, to work with local charities such as Age UK and Citizens Advice and energy providers to assist pensioners with navigating the means-tested process and to ensure they access any benefits or grants. 4. Promote energy efficiency, develop or expand schemes to provide free or subsidised energy-efficient home improvements, such as insulation, for pensioners in need to help reduce their long-term heating costs. 5. Winter support network, to establish a local volunteer or community support network to check in on vulnerable pensioners during the winter months and refer them to relevant services if they are struggling to heat their homes. 6. To raise awareness, to launch a public information campaigns to inform pensioners about the change to the winter fuel payment, alternative support options and assistance available in applying for benefits. By passing this motion, this council demonstrates its commitment to supporting pensioners in our community, ensuring that they are not left behind by recent policy changes and taking proactive measures to mitigate the impact of these cuts. This motion, if passed, would direct the council to take action on behalf of pensioners affected by the winter fuel payment changes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Very well done. Thank you. Does that find a seconder? Councillor Lees, do you wish to say anything?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm more than happy to second this motion by Councillor Bond. I think it's an excellent motion for which I hope you all can support. In doing so, this will enable us to show that this council supports its elderly and vulnerable residents, many of which we tend to forget about, have no access to computers or any social media and have little or no knowledge on how to get the help required, i.e. pension credits, the electric and the gas tariffs, whatever. In fact, if they was watching Martin Lewis this morning or the other morning, they did tell quite a lot about this, so it's vital that we get this information out to our residents. So please support this very valid motion put before us this evening. And could I request a recorded vote, please, when it does go to the vote? Thank you.
Thank you. Right. If there's any questions, we'll take questions or we'll just go into debate. Councillor Buckler?
Yeah, it's probably a question for Paul, if that's okay. The key point in this relates to the publishing a pension credit uptake strategic plan for the next 5 years in consultation with key stakeholders. You know, it would be good to know whether you think that we are the appropriate organisation to do that within the Derbyshire Dales, or whether there are other organisations who should be doing that we could be lobbying. Because I think if we sign up to, I support most of the stuff that's put in this motion. The change to this could sign us up to a whole load of work for officers, which we're not best placed to do. So it'd be good to get your thoughts on that, Paul.
Thank you, Councillor. Paul?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, as members will be aware, we do an awful lot of work already through the various partner organisations across the Derbyshire Dales, including Age UK and Citizens Advice, and we would certainly be encouraging, as I'm sure they would intend to anyway, to raise awareness of the opportunity for residents to apply for support where that's available. So I think very much our role would be to encourage them, to work with them through the existing programmes that they've got. There may be opportunities whereby we can give them information from our existing knowledge through our revenues and benefits colleagues, and I think that's possibly the most effective way in which we could disseminate alongside any other funds that this district council may run in terms of discretionary grant support, which is something we already do.
Councillor O'Brien?
Yes, thank you, Chair. There are some elements in this proposal I would be happy to support. But having said that, I've got very little, in fact no time for political posturing or for lectures from a party that has brought this country to the brink of bankruptcy, and where the poverty gap between the haves and the have-nots has grown to an all-time high. Some members opposite have very short memories. It was just 3 years ago when this authority, under Conservative leadership, was labelled the meanest council in England, following an expose on BBC Newsnight. When during the COVID epidemic, only one single discretionary payment to the hundreds of local families with no money coming in was made in a full 3-month period. When the Conservative leader of this council point blank refused to support a review of the discretionary payment system. When it took Lib Dem, Labour and Green members to call an extraordinary meeting of the council to force the administration to change its mind. So let's stop this politicking. Let's focus on what we can do as a council, as one council, to support the residents for whom the withdrawal of the winter fuel payment may cause them hardship. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Buttle, did you have your hand up? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, there's lots of this that I like. I particularly like the working on insulation. Insulation is fantastic stuff. We are doing quite a lot with our Hug 2 and Hug 3 home upgrades grant stuff, but I would welcome the opportunity to push for more. I think we've even got a retrofit officer nowadays, so we are making some progress. But obviously more progress would be fantastic. I think we've also had a raising awareness of pension credit uptake. I don't know if this was something that Karen wanted to address. I think we might have had an awareness week just last week, and we're working together with a few of the other local organisations. And I don't know if that would be helpful to point that out or to ask for a little bit of elucidation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dobbs, I've got you next.
Thank you, Chair. Clearly the motion is a bit like the curate's egg, good in parts, and to that effect I would like to propose an amendment, and I will pass it round now. Whilst it's going round, let me explain the motivation behind this. It's really to pick out the good bits, take out the bits that lead us into possibly uncosted areas, and hopefully... sorry, Lucy. Okay, sorry. These people think ahead of you. Thank you, Lucy. Anyway, coming round now is effectively, if somebody had taken a blue pencil to Councillor Bond's original, it's what's left. So why have I thought that deletions are necessary? And as has been suggested so far, I believe that the original motion goes well beyond the widespread concern over the impact of the changes on certain pensioners, those who are living in fuel poverty and yet have not chosen to apply for pension credit. But it commits this council to a variety of actions that are not costed or well defined and for which no detailed report has been prepared. I do notice that the revised motion has made it actually even more open-ended. We may do this, but, you know, who's going to decide what? You know, this is all a bit of a uncosted exercise. And of course, as we've heard, and as seen in Paul's paper, there are several organisations which work in this area. For example, Citizens Advice have a specific project to help the over 65s with benefit applications. And our council, as we've also heard, has a good track record of working with such agencies, and we do host several of them in this building. We don't need to set up parallel schemes of our own. Rather, we must try to ensure that these organisations continue to do their excellent work and receive the funding and support they need. And it's worth remembering that the County Council have recently completed a consultation that is considering proposals to end discretionary grant funding, and amongst those that receive these grants are organisations that provide the very structure on which local networks depend. So the motion as it stands does also have some aspects that have been irrelevant by recent events. For example, MPs have already voted on the issue. There's general agreement that the winter fuel allowance is a poorly targeted benefit. However, its removal from all except those on pension credit is going to be a significant blow to many in Derbyshire Dales. For example, I believe almost 6,000 over 80s in the Derbyshire Dales constituency will lose the benefit unless they successfully apply for pension credit. Nevertheless, I believe that unamended, the original motion could not be passed by any responsible council. It has too many ill-defined and open-ended commitments. However, simply rejecting could be interpreted by some as indicating that this council is not concerned over those who will suffer as a result of the changes. And this is far from the truth. The decision that members have over this amendment that they'll have to make is whether to support what is, I hope, a constructive amendment that confirms our support for a particularly vulnerable part of our community, or to continue with what might be regarded as a motion designed to fail. And I hope that members will support the amendment. Thank you, Chair.
Are you going to let us, for everybody's sake, just read the amendment out, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I certainly can. This council notes with concern the recent changes to the winter fuel payment eligibility criteria, which now requires pensioners to not only have reached state pension age, but also to be in receipt of a qualifying means-tested benefit to receive support. These changes will significantly affect pensioners in rural areas like Derbyshire, many of whom face fuel poverty and may struggle to navigate the complexities of means testing. This council believes that all pensioners should be supported through the winter months to ensure that they are not left cold or forced to choose between heating and other essentials. This council calls on the government to reconsider its decision to cut the winter fuel payment. This council further resolves to continue to support charities such as Age UK, Citizen Advice, to assist pensioners with navigating the means testing process and ensure that they access any benefits or grants to which they are entitled. And 2, continue to support schemes that provide free or subsidised energy efficient home improvements to help reduce long-term heating costs. And 3, use our existing communication channels for a public information campaign to inform pensioners about the changes to the winter fuel payment, alternate support options and assistance available in applying for benefits. By passing this motion, this council demonstrates its commitment to supporting pensioners in our community, ensuring that they are not left behind by recent policy changes and taking measures to mitigate the impact of these cuts.
Thank you, Councillor Dobbs. Does that find a seconder, please? Councillor Boynton? Sorry, I've got my glasses on. Yes, Councillor Wilton I can see now. Thank you. Do you wish to say anything? Sorry about that.
No, nothing. It was a good motion. Thank you all.
So that's been moved and seconded. Would anybody like to move into debate and debate this matter, please? We are debating the amendment. So I've lost my chance to talk because an actual motion has been an amendment has been put forward. You're more than welcome to speak on the amendment if you wish to.
Well, yeah, I will do.
Go on then.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. First of all, I completely don't accept the amendment, and I'm thankful for Councillor Bond to bring this forward to us. And I'm glad that Councillor O'Brien didn't want to do any political posturing. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm totally shocked, and I'm against means testing pensioners. It's abhorrent. You know, the next thing Labour will want to do is take us bus pass offers when we become a pensioner. Maybe they want to take us pension off completely, because that's where it goes, isn't it? So if that's what Labour want to do, bring in austerity, I'm against it. So, you know, I'm glad for Councillor Bond to bring this forward to the Council.
Councillor Burford, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think this scrapping of winter fuel payments by the government has been a historic mistake, and the cut should obviously be reversed. So I think the motion, or the amended motion that Councillor Dobbs has proposed, does do that. And it does affect, this motion, this action does affect 11 million people. In a recent poll, over 50% of pensioners say they'll heat their homes less this winter, and nearly as many say they'll cut back on essentials. 75% say they will be affected by the cutbacks. Sudden announcements like this are bound to cause stress and worry to those affected, because it was unannounced, I suppose, at the time of the general election, and that's come as a shock to people, especially as energy bills are set to rise this winter. And so it's really very poor PR by the government. Councillor Bond's motion ignores the cost of their suite of mitigation measures, which are open-ended and duplicating existing projects. Surely some form of means testing could be better if the government want to make cutbacks to given the £22 billion shortfall in spending that they've found since they took over the government. So a suite of mitigation measures open-ended and duplicating existing projects. So some form of means testing could better target help for the most vulnerable to spend on essentials, or those slightly better off to spend on improved insulation, for instance. I support very strongly, as usual, the excellent and well thought through amendments proposed by Councillor Dobbs. It is too late now to get support from MPs, as he has said, but we should give all possible support to the CAB and Age UK and other organisations like that act on behalf of elderly people nationally and locally for that matter, including financial help. Finally, we know that Rob Coggins and his team are constantly enhancing properties such as Matlock's almshouses for elderly people with energy-efficient improvements to help reduce heating costs. But there's no, as far as I can see, there's no similar offer from the government to mitigate some of these proposals. So I strongly support Councillor Dobbs' amended motion for the Council tonight and urge support for it.
Thank you. Before I come to you, I've got you, Councillor Hobson, but Councillor Buttle, you put your hand up. But can I just go to Councillor Bond? I realise that you put the original motion in, and you will be given opportunity to speak at the end of the amendment. I'm going to ask you a question quite simply. How do you feel about the amended motion? Would you be? I'm going to ask you the question. Would you be prepared to accept that amended motion? Because obviously that's going to save some time, but you can't go into debate on the matter.
I can respond though to the amended notion though, can't I?
You will get opportunity at the end of the...
No, to respond to the amendment from Councillor Dobbs.
It says here on the right to reply in 1810 of the Constitution,
Yes.
if an amendment is moved, the mover of the original proposal has the right to reply at the close of the debate on the amendment, but shall not otherwise speak on the amendment.
Right, thank you for that.
So
sir.
it's a bit of a cleft stick situation.
Yes.
You have a think about that at the moment.
No, I can respond, Chair. I mean, there are a whole range of reasons why I'd refute Councillor Dobbs' assertions, and Councillor O'Brien's for that matter. But in reality, I would want my notice of motion to go forward in the first place.
Thank you. Right, we'll now go on to Councillor Buttle. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There was I just wanted to be absolutely sure this is like a total swap, one for the other, as an amendment. Like the first one goes and the second one comes in. That's what we're meaning to do here. We're not adding it or taking bits off here and there. It's just a swap, right? I thought that. And I will also take the opportunity to say that Tidesville has a warm homes group. I've got 20 people on my WhatsApp, and they are to be congratulated. They do fantastic work for people who are living in the cold sometimes. Quite a lot of time they're just out for a cup of tea. But you know, it's actually a really good system, and all these various ideas put forward, pretty much in favour. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hobson.
Thank you, Chair. I support Councillor Bond in his original motion. It seems to me that Councillor Dobbs is just piggybacking on this. You know, he could have put a motion in for council, but Councillor Bond took the time to do this, and the actions say could include. He's not tying this council down to lots of uncosted things. This was his motion.
We are
and
talking about the amendment.
It is the amendment, yes.
Okay.
So we will get a chance to talk about our ward and what have you. We'll just talk about the amendment. That is the amendment then, yeah. I disagree. I think he's just piggybacked on it, and I'm sticking with Councillor Bond. Thank you.
Right. Councillor Linthwaite.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, thank you to Councillor Bond for bringing this topic forward. It is a really important one. And also to Councillor Dobbs for the amendment. I can see that they've both thought about this quite carefully. My concerns would be over us reinventing the wheel. There are already lots of methods for supporting people with their pension credits claims, and community groups set up for that sort of thing. I'm sort of wary of us being led into areas that are not really part of our responsibility and committing us to various costs and things associated with that. And also the other issue, and I have to be completely honest, this is my personal feeling, I spotted recently an elderly lady buying a purse in a leather goods shop not so far from here, and it cost several £100, which is why I noticed. And with the publicity over the changing of the pension credit rules, she did come to mind, and I think, well, she's not going to notice this money going. However, my concern would be over those who are not claiming pension credits and should be. So I think that's something that we can do to help and try and publicise that and steer people to signpost places that would help them. But also the people who are not going to claim pension credits because they don't qualify, but only just don't qualify. And I would encourage the government to have a graduated scheme where there isn't such a simple cut-off, because it's a blunt instrument. And I know that's not something that we can do anything about, but so I am supportive of a lot of this, but I do have my issues. Thank you.
Thank you. I've not got any... Councillor Flitter, sorry, I was overlooking you there. Councillor Flitter. Okay.
That's not afresh. Yeah, I just wanted a brief comment, because one thing that's not been discussed, and I don't see anywhere where it has been discussed in government, is the fact what happens to those people that are just above the poverty line. I mean, they get no help whatsoever, and every time there's a change, the criteria goes down and more people end up in that gap that get absolutely nothing and consideration. And I think that, you know, that should be taken on board. But I just feel that, again, it's a matter of pride for an ageing population that's not been taken into account. But as per the amendment, I think that reflects on the abilities of this council to actually make an impact, and I shall be supporting the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Flitter. Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, both motions are quite good. Councillor Linthwaite's, I think she's hit on there should be a graduation for... At the moment there's a straight line and you either one side or the other, and I think it'd be better if it were graduated, definitely. Also, it's occurred to me that the take-up of this, there's
big chunk of money that's not taken up. Well, that chunk of money goes back to the Exchequer. Could that chunk of money be distributed to councils in their hardship funds so that it would help if people get in serious trouble in the winter? Is that possible, Karen, to do that?
Sorry, Councillor Slack, where would they take the money
from? The money, what's left over, the government, instead of going back to Exchequer, could we lobby the government to dish it out to local councils so they could put it in the hardship fund?
Well, we always lobby the government for more spending.
Yeah, well, that money would go back to the Exchequer, wouldn't it? That money, what's not used.
Well, the government will be making its autumn statement soon, and I'm sure they'll be doing a complete review of where all the money goes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Councillor Slack. Councillor Wilton?
Thank you very much. First of all, I think you have to tip your hat to Councillor Bond, because I think it is a very hot topic at the moment. But I think what Peter's amendment offers is some more crystalline sort of clarity around it, if I'm honest with you, and some actions. And also, I think what we need to do as a council is basically, because we're all in violent agreement here, aren't we? Everyone's agreeing here, just different forms of that. We're just trying to define that now, aren't we? I think what we need to do is how can we help the facilities we've got get more value for money out of those guys? Because if we do try to set up some of the longer term things here that we're looking at in the original paper, I think we're going to end up sort of like long term, it could be 2-3 years before that happens. Let's try and get what we've got now, improve what we've got, and hopefully this year we can make a difference, not in the future, because people need it now.
Thank you, Councillor Wilton. Councillor O'Brien?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, look, I'm as disappointed as anyone that about the changes to the winter fuel payment, but I understand the reasons. And as I said, I support much of what Councillor Bond put in his original proposal, and I support most of what's in the amendment. But what I can't support is us, the council, taking a stick to beat the government. I think that is unnecessary. For us as a council to do that. I want us to focus on the positive measures we can take to ameliorate the effects of the changes. So I'm disappointed that the amendment feels the need to ask the government to reconsider its decision, as much as I was disappointed at the inclusion in the original proposal to ask the council to lobby our members of parliament. So that remains my view, I'm afraid.
Thank you. I've nobody else wishing to speak in debate, so I'm going to turn now to Councillor Bond, who now it's the now you can come back and give us your view.
I'm very grateful, Chair. Chair, I wrote to my MP John Whitby a few weeks ago regarding the winter fuel allowance issue, and I did not get a response. I did not consider my email to be taking a stick to somebody. I took it as my right and my duty and responsibility to ask questions and to garner support. I'm asking no more than the council to do the same, so I refute that. Secondly, there's always a wealthy pensioner when referencing these kind of debates that gets drawn into the equation. We're not talking about any wealthy pensioners. We're talking about people who either just are just over the line or immediately under the line, and that those people are disadvantaged, and there are 880,000 of them. Are we reinventing the wheel? Well, I don't think we are, Chair, because yes, there are existing projects, and I'm involved in a number of projects myself relating to these kind of issues, but the truth is that 60% of people make a claim for pension credits. Forget the winter fuel allowance for now, but 60% of people, and actually that leaves 40%. And that's been the same for years and years and years. And Age UK and other organisations have been around for significant periods of time, working away in the background doing this. The point that I'm trying to make is that I feel that this 60% has not increased. And that's been mentioned not just in a current Labour government, but it's been mentioned in a Conservative government and in a coalition government in the past. And that 60% should be increased. How do we do that? Well, I think we need more clarity and strategic action. And I think a local authority can take a lead on this and not just try and bolster and mess about with other people's ideologies like Age UK and others. We should applaud them, but we should also try and provide some strategic direction. The council can indeed lead on this, and that's where my notice of motion sits, really, that I believe that to be true. We're not suggesting, just referring to Councillor Dobbs' comments, and I'm really pleased actually Councillor Dobbs has made amendments, because it really tells me that there is thinking and concern around this. But I'm not suggesting that there should be a parallel scheme by the local authority in relation to other organisations and charities. What I'm suggesting is that it's a working with in cooperation, but the council can indeed take a lead in promoting some strategic direction. There are indeed 6,000 over 80s, we are told, in this authority sitting around, often in cold. This is not a political posturing. The past, I'm told, is in the past. I wasn't here when a Conservative administration was leading on this, and I cannot answer for that. All I can do is put forward my views now, and the past is in the past and irrelevant. I was not here in the council. The issue is actually now. It's this winter, it's next winter, and it's beyond. So, there may be a number of issues that Councillor Dobbs considers to be woolly, but the very word support itself, the word support, is woolly. I was always taught to ask the question, if I read in a document that said to offer support or give support to, well, how is this going to be done? With what? Over what period of time? What serious resources are being brought to bear to do this? Councillor Dobbs' motion has the word support, just like mine does. It doesn't define how that should take place. And that's why I would not want to go just with Councillor Dobbs' amendment, but to put my notice of motion on the table first. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. I've nobody else wishing to speak, and we have finished it off with Councillor Bond, so we now need to vote to see whether we agree on the amended motion.
Chair's point.
Just excuse me for a minute.
Okay.
I can come back to Peter if you wish.
I was just wondering whether I was supposed to, that was all. That's the proposer of the amendment.
Just excuse me for a minute.
That's what I said.
No, you haven't.
Okay, fair enough.
I will tell you what. It says, C, the mover of the amendment has no right of reply to the debate on his or her amendment. But thanks for asking. So, we've got to vote now to see if we agree to the amendment, the amended motion. So all those in favour of the amendment...
Chair, can we have a recorded vote, please?
You certainly can. Does that find a seconder? Councillor Hobson. So it's a recorded vote, and basically we are going to vote to agree, well, see if we agree the amended motion. So all those in favour, please.
It's recorded.
Sorry, Stuart. Sorry. Yes. Sorry, Lucy. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bates. Councillor Boynton.
Against.
Councillor Bond.
Against.
Councillor Buckler.
For.
Councillor Bull. Against. Councillor Martin Burfoot.
For.
Councillor Sue Burfoot. For. Councillor Butcher.
Abstain.
Councillor Buttle.
For.
Councillor Dobbs.
For.
Councillor Flitter.
For.
Councillor Franks. Councillor G.
Against.
Councillor Hobson. Against. Councillor Lees.
Against.
Councillor Linthwaite.
For.
Councillor Maelstrom.
For.
Councillor Murphy.
Against.
Councillor Nash.
Against.
Councillor O'Brien.
Abstain.
Councillor Shelley.
For.
Councillor Slack.
For.
Councillor Wayne.
For.
And Councillor Wilton.
For.
We'll just let Lucy total those up and give us the scores on the doors. Thank you.
Carried, Chair.
Yes, that's on the recorded vote. That is carried. So the original motion is now replaced by the amended motion, that is now the substantive motion, and is now open for debate. Do we wish to have any further debate on this matter? Councillor Hobson.
Thank you, Chair. 35% of my ward are over the age of 65. A great deal of them live alone. It's unfair of the government to assume that those just above the threshold in my ward are affluent and will not be affected by this policy, as has been said by my colleague opposite. It's not true, and there are real fears about what may happen next, and I think that is a real fear for our residents. I'm very disappointed that obviously we've not got Councillor Bond's motion through, but let this council demonstrate its commitment to supporting pensioners. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hobson. I've nobody else wishing to speak currently, so we're now going to vote. Oh, Councillor Dobbs.
Can I just sum up? I don't think anything in my amendment undermines the commitment of this council towards people who fall in the sort of key range. It is absolutely centred. It's just simply to realign what this council can do to maximise its impact. And I hope that is the message that anybody watching this meeting will take away. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So the substantive motion is now going to be voted upon. That's the one that was submitted by Councillor Dobbs. So no, we have to vote on it again. This is what happened last time. So yeah, we have to vote on it again. So all those in favour, please raise your hands for Councillor Dobbs's motion. Against? 2. And any abstentions? 2. Yep, that motion is now carried. Councillor Dobbs's amendment is now carried. Thank you. And can I just say, sorry, Councillor Wilton.
Was the original one asked to be recorded vote originally? Did someone ask for that?
It was the original one, but that was for the original motion.
Not just for the amendment, but for the original one. So
yeah. So the substantive one, there wasn't a request for that to be a recorded vote. Okay. I'd just like to say what we've just discussed is a very, very concerning issue, and I'd like to thank everybody. I'd like to thank Councillor Bond for bringing the initial motion and taking the time, and also Councillor Dobbs for taking the time. Thank you very much. Right, now we move on to the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. Those, that being the meeting on Thursday, the 25th of July, 2024. Has everybody had an opportunity to read these minutes? Thank you. They're being moved. Does anybody else second that? Councillor Lees second that. All those in favour of accepting the minutes? Anybody against? Any abstentions? That's very kind, thank you. Now we'll move on to item 9 of the agenda, which is the Local Authority Housing Fund, which I'm going to ask Rob Coggins to produce, please, or discuss. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to bring this report to members. The Local Authority Housing Fund Round 3, as the title suggests, is the third round of direct funding to local authorities by government, which is an interesting change in how housing is funded within the country at the moment. We've been successful in delivering 2 previous rounds to deliver 20 new properties, 17 through the council and 3 through partner organisations. We submitted an expression of interest in March, which was successful but was delayed in the results because of the general election. So LAF3 is a programme that started under the previous government, has been continued through the new government. The programme is a slightly more generous programme than before, so the grant rates are slightly higher, and the the needs to match fund by the council are slightly less, so the overall input from us is not as much as in the previous rounds. The programme focuses particularly on homelessness and provision of new affordable housing to stem the needs of those in temporary accommodation. So we're a little bit insulated here, but in the south of the country there are real problems in the amount of people stuck in temporary accommodation, often for many, many years, and children particularly are affected by that. That isn't the case here, so the proposal, given that we've got a reasonable supply of temporary accommodation and we have a lot of preventative work, is to put the funding more into new affordable housing rather than the temporary provision. We're proposing to do some of that as council housing directly through ourselves, and in doing that we can tackle empty properties, improve the energy efficiency of poorer homes, and generally increase the revenue income to the council through rents. We're also proposing to support two organisations, one in Matlock and one in Ashbourne, to help them develop their programmes, one of which will have a revenue impact for us. So that's quite an attractive proposition in terms of what we can do with the funding. It is a challenging programme, not least because we're already a quarter of the way through it, and we've only really just received the money this month. So we were promised initially we would get a better indication in the spring, but obviously, as I say, the general election got in the way and has delayed the programme somewhat. So we have to be realistic about what this funding can be used for. This isn't about getting spades in the ground and going out and getting planning permission to start a new build programme. There are other programmes for that. So we've had the tip-off, obviously, that this funding is coming, so we've been looking at opportunities for quite a while, particularly around empty homes. And some of the members will know in the room that, of properties in their wards that we've been talking about. So, and I have briefed ward members on the opportunities, particularly in Ashbourne and Wirksworth, that we're hoping to solve. So there are opportunities in the mix, and we're keen to get cracking with that as well. So the other thing with this fund that is new is there's a revenue contribution for councils to help deliver the fund. We've got some funding here that we'd like to use to extend the capacity within the housing team to deliver more affordable housing, not just for this programme, but I'm conscious that there may well be a LAF4 or LAF5 coming forward, because as I say, there's a new model of funding affordable housing, and that's direct to councils. And I think as we've been successful in 3 rounds now, we're kind of on the list of councils that are wanting to get involved and be part of the programme. Only 2 councils in Derbyshire were successful in their bids. Most of them actually didn't bid at all because it's perceived to be a bit complex and a bit tricky. So it's definitely a good news item, and it gives us an opportunity to expand our council housing stock. The key part of this, I shouldn't forget, is to support the ongoing support for Afghans who fled the country with the Taliban taking control. That very much sits alongside the government's commitment to those who supported the British government and armed forces in their country at the time, and we have an ongoing obligation as a nation to fulfil government policy around helping Afghan refugees. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Mr Coggins, please? Councillor Shelley?
Just a quick one, Rob. Thanks. Yeah, it's an excellent report. Thoroughly support it. Just on the question of Afghan refugees, do we have some idea of the scale of that as it relates to Derbyshire Dales, and whether this is going to be an ongoing question, or is it a historic question that we're still, as a country, playing catch up on?
Yes, I think we've got past the main blockage that was at the time, when several thousand people were flown over to the UK very quickly, and we lived in hotels, particularly around the main airports, for often several months, if not a year. But there are still people in refugee camps around in that part of the world that are needing to leave, and there are other routes that probably members are less aware of, particularly those being housed within MOD accommodation, so what would be normally service family accommodation. That's been made available for refugees as well. So there are lots of different mechanisms in place. We're right at the end of the chain, as it were. So we're taking steps to provide accommodation, and then through the regional and national processes, people will be matched with us. And we know from the really good success stories we've had already that we are making a difference to people that are in a very difficult place.
Thank you. Councillor Lees.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you, Rob. Wonderful work again. As you've done in the past, we've had these conversations quite a few times. Obviously, we had the Ukraine situation. Is this all just limited to Afghan refugees, or is it wider open?
So only a third of the programme relates to Afghan refugees, so only 8 properties. The rest relates to local people that would be affected by homelessness.
Okay. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. Rob, just some clarification on the rental levels which are proposed. I think I'm right in saying our council housing programme is predicated on social rents, which are obviously lower than affordable rents, and obviously many refugee families are large families and therefore fall foul of the limitation on child benefit. The memorandum of agreement refers to affordable rent. Is there a subtle change in policy approach here, that we're moving away from social rents to affordable rents?
Well, you're right, the council's programme is predicated on social rents, which is within the umbrella of affordable rents. That's one that is the lowest. Then there's affordable rent, which is up to 80% of market rents. Now we know, because of the larger type properties we'll be securing for Afghan families, 80% of a 4-bed market rent, it's going to be very expensive. So we aim for a social rent, and that's what we've been successful in doing that. So unless it's on a private development where there's a management company fee, we do typically aim for social rents when we're buying individual properties. So I'd have to check the memorandum again in more detail, but I'm confident we could stick with social rents. Perhaps a less well-known fact about the council housing programme is that with the support of the leaders, we did actually secure a lower increase in rents than we were able to do. So in the last round, the government said we could increase rents by 7%, but working with the leaders, they agreed a lower percentage of only 3.5%. So we've been trying to mitigate the impact of other policy changes on families, particularly larger families, not just Afghans, but others that are in council housing, so that we don't put people into poverty through higher rents.
Thank you. Councillor Dobbs, please.
Thank you, Chair. Quick question about temporary accommodation. That sounds as if to be effective, you have to have it available. So to what extent do you have to live with vacancy in order for it to be available, or is it just simply short-term letting?
There's a few options in terms of temporary accommodation. I've mentioned in the report the 12 that we have in partnership with NCHA, our housing partner. We also use bed and breakfast accommodation and hotels when we need to. That's obviously the least preferred choice, but inevitably that will be used on a regular basis, particularly when we've got low turnover in our normal social housing stock, if you like. So often members talk about the great work of the housing team. I'm probably the face of that team, but of course we've got 3 or 4 officers in the homelessness team and in the housing options team that all their work is about prevention and stopping people needing that temporary accommodation in the first place. So we do a lot of work to both prevent homelessness, i.e. keeping people where they are or finding an immediate solution to a particular problem without needing to go through homelessness. Or if they do become homeless, we've got a very quick turnaround to find them a more appropriate property. And Age UK, the CAB, all the agencies we mentioned in the early debate, they all play a role in helping us do that. And we're often one of the top quartile councils in England to prevent homelessness.
Councillor G.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Yeah, it's a good report, this. Just a technical question. By my simple maths, was it 3.8 million to provide about 23 houses? Which I just did it on my phone, that's about £165,000 per house. But obviously it's going to be about finding houses or building houses. because council was gifted a house in Overhaddon, which is in my area, which it currently owns, and I know that it's on the market because I went up to the parish council the other night. But I was just thinking, now we've got this stash of cash to provide houses. I mean, could the council reconsider looking at that proposal to actually bring that house into council-owned property?
Thank you, Councillor. I think there are two questions there. So the first is about the funding available. This report is before Karen's report on the capital programme, because we're asking for authority not just to spend the grant, which we need to do, but also add some of our own capital to help meet the gap that you've identified. And there's also some revenue funding that will follow in that as well. So the total programme is more than the 3.8 million. In terms of the Overhaddon property, obviously members considered that not long ago, and this particular programme doesn't allow us to fund the renovation of existing council housing. It's about net gain in terms of new stock. Even if we did have the permission to use it for that property, I think, as I reported before, the energy performance and the internal arrangement alone would make it very difficult, and well, in fact illegal, to let that property as social housing. I'm with you on the idea, but in terms of deliverability, it would be very difficult to achieve.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Shelley next.
Just another quick one on the deliverability side of things. Are you confident that we'll be able to find a suitable candidate to recruit to the Rural Housing Enabler role very quickly?
There's been a recent, another thing members won't know about is that DEFRA have been funding a new programme of RHEs across the country for the last 12 months. So if we can't go our own, I'd nick somebody else's. But this kind of programme is exciting and gives people the opportunity to come and work here and be creative and help us deliver new housing.
Thank you. Councillor Buttle, just.
Thanks, Rob. All of these are going to be social housing and none of them are going to be affordable housing. Is that what you were saying?
Affordable rent, yeah. So, yeah.
Affordable rent, yeah. So, like, we're getting affordable, but we're not getting social. So these aren't like council houses. Can we promote them to council houses at a later time?
Sorry, I think I may have misunderstood. So there will be social housing, and on a social rent. Affordable rent is a form of social housing. So it's a bit geeky, I know, but that's the wider definition that we work to.
Gotcha then. So these are actually council houses?
Yes, apart from the few that we're proposing to passport on some of the grant to other providers, but they will be operated in the same way.
Right, I've nobody else listed to ask any questions, so do I find Councillor Shelley?
Thank you. Yes, I'm very, very happy to propose the recommendations here. And again, really just to thank the Council's team for, it's an amazing success, really, this grant success. I know how difficult it is to get grants, so going through that process, very well done. This will have a real impact on homelessness in the Dales and reduces our reliance on bed and breakfast accommodation further. It's good that we already own, if I've got the maths right, I think 40 properties. This means that we'll get a further 23, I think that's correct. That may sound small, but it is significant, particularly to those families who will benefit. So I have no hesitation in recommending this for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Got Councillor Hughes' hand up. Are you wishing to second?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to second this, and in doing so, I'd like to draw attention to two different paragraphs in section 2. The first is in my own ward. I know there has been some discussion of houses going to refugees, but I think it's important for members of the public to recognise what is written in paragraph 2.5, that all homes acquired for refugees will be available as general needs housing once the existing refugee need has come to an end. This is significant for the Dales, given the relatively low numbers of 4-bedroom houses in the social housing stock. And of course, the what part of the reason we're getting the money from central government is because we are meeting this refugee issue, is that I believe. So I'd like to draw that to the council's attention, also to members of the public. The second point I'd like to just mention, which again is, and Rob, this is really, we're so appreciative of this, the Hurst Farm regeneration project is now going to be a company, and the company needs revenue to maintain its support in Hurst Farm and the surrounding areas. And the way in which this is proposed that this is done is written down in paragraph 2.12, and that is that the rent from a number of houses will be used to finance this the company and ensure that the community the company can continue to provide support in around the Hurst Farm area. So I'd commend that as well. So thank you very much, Rob, for this approach, which is quite creative in terms of providing support within what is an area of social housing which is successful in this country, I think. And I also draw attention to the fact of social housing, social rents rather than affordable rents, and I think mention was made of larger families that would if they're on which would have limited access to what is now social security payments, which are limited, and 30% of children in this country are at poverty level. 30% of families with children are at a level of poverty, are described as in poverty, and that compares with 15% of pensioners. So the real group of people who are suffering in this country at the moment are working age families with children, and they are suffering badly. And the ability to provide social rented houses is absolutely essential to this group in society. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. So it's been moved and it's been seconded. Councillor Burford, I've got you. Are you happy to come into debate?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to endorse the congratulations to Rob Coggins and his team, his excellent team, for what they've done, because he did point out that we're one of only 2 councils in Derbyshire who've actually made a bid for this funding. And 3.8 million out of 450 million in total nationally is quite impressive, to be honest. So yet again, I think the team have done a fantastic job. I'd also like to point to recommendation 3 and 4 about the an extra full-time permanent rural housing enabler for the housing department, with obviously a supplementary revenue budget of 25,500 for that for 24 to 25 financial years. And also like to back up Councillor Hughes in what he said about the Hurst Farm regeneration project, and it's now another community land trust in Matlock, strange enough, so that's good as well. And the work that's been done on Hurst Farm estate is very impressive, and I just hope it can continue. Now we've got a new project manager as well, so I think Mary Christine Schmidt's work in the past needs to be continued, and I just hope that that will happen. It's certainly supported by all Matlock members. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burford. Councillor Flitter.
Thank you, Chair. Well, it was only a comment, and I think a lot of people have touched on it. But, you know, this council has had a number of successes in the housing team, and I think Rob is too modest, because the skill, the expertise and the knowledge that Rob has got in creating schemes with and getting the funding to do that, I think has been a tremendous aid to this council, and he should be applauded and he should be recognised for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wilton.
Yeah, my comment was really to echo that, and it was a pleasure watching Rob saying it there, because he was grinning from ear to ear as he was telling us. So and it's nice to have positive news to talk about in an age where we don't always have positive stuff. So great, brilliant.
Councillor Burford Sue.
Thank you, Chair. Just to echo what people have said, to congratulate Rob and his team for this success in getting £3.8 million. That's quite an amount of money. For anybody who happens to be listening to this on YouTube, I think we do have to make it clear that this is government money. They don't have to worry about their council tax being spent. It's government money. And I was also pleased to see that the requirement to, hope I'm right, to provide a specific percentage of match funding has been removed. I hope I'm right about that. I'm sure that all members will agree that providing these homes is essential, and I think we also have to remember, or just point out that, acknowledge that they become part of the council's social housing stock, and that's a corporate priority for this Progressive Alliance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burford. I've nobody else to speak in debate, so if it's okay, we'll move to the vote. All those in favour of accepting the 4 recommendations? Looks fairly full. Any against? Any abstentions? No, that is therefore moved unanimously. Thank you. We now move on to agenda item 10, which is the capital programme, and Karen's going to kindly lead us through that. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Chair. So this report seeks approval for changes to the capital programme and the associated financing, taking account of slippage from 24-25 into 25-26, where projects have been delayed, and it includes bids for 3 new capital projects and other changes. Appendix A to the report provides details of spending to 31st of July, the 24-25 original budget and the proposed revised budget for each capital project, shown over each of the financial years. The 3 new bids for which member approval is sought total £5,486,041. They're described in paragraphs 2.12 to 2.29 of the report. 2 of the new bids, for the cemetery extension at Matlock and for the 5-year car park improvement plan, have been considered and approved by the Community and Environment Committee. As explained in paragraph 2.13 of the report, the Local Authority Housing Fund project had a very short turnaround time to obtain the grant, so it wasn't possible to take this to the Community and Environment Committee, and it came direct to this council meeting as a result. And I'm pleased that you all approved that scheme, otherwise I might have had to get my pencil out quickly and recalculate the figures in this report. The proposed revisions to the programme are summarised in table 4 of the report, and they result in a net increase of just over £4.5 million. And the reasons for the changes are summarised in table 5. If the proposed changes are approved, the revised capital programme for 24-25 to 28-29 will be £33,466,045, and the proposed financing for that is shown in table 6. With the financing, £27.8 million, which is 83% of the programme, is financed by grants and contributions, and the rest comes from capital receipts and our reserves. So the grants and contributions play a very significant part in our programme, and without those grants, projects such as Ashbourne Reborn, the public sector decarbonisation and affordable housing, much of the affordable housing wouldn't have been affordable to us. Appendix C sets out the impact of the financing where the Council's reserves and capital receipts are used. As set out in paragraph 7.2 of the report, there is sufficient funding to finance the proposed capital programme. However, the uncommitted amount available after that would reduce to £959,000. As I've indicated at previous council meetings, the council could of course consider borrowing on top of that 959,000. But any borrowing must be affordable and sustainable for the revenue account. I'm asking members to approve the 6 recommendations set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. Do we have any questions for Karen? Councillor Buttle?
Yes. Am I right in thinking that the 500 and some thousand, 503,000 that went into from section 106 that went into Rob's previous report is taken out of this, and it leaves us with 2.9 million left in our section 106 reserve? Have I got that
yes.
right, or that is right?
Yes, the
right,
requirements for the local authority housing fund are reflected in this report.
Right, great, thank you.
Councillor Martin Burford.
Yes, thank you, Chair. First of all, I didn't apologise for not noting down the paragraph, but there's reference in the report to the Keep Park Joint Planning Board. Can you remind members that and officers that it's not been that known as that for many, many years. It's the Peak District National Park Authority, so if that can just be corrected, that would be great. And also, I don't know if I've missed it, but I just wonder, since we've been talking about gypsies and travellers recently, quite a lot in the last couple of weeks, in fact, I just wonder if there's any allowance or allocation for funding the permanent traveller sites, which we hope will come on stream at some stage in the near future.
I'll just check. I don't think there's anything specific in the capital programme for the gypsy and traveller site. So if we were to need need funding for that, we would be looking to obtain grants or to use some of the 959,000 that's uncommitted that I mentioned.
Thank you, Councillor Burford. Next I've got Councillor Flitter.
Yeah, well, thanks. I mean, I don't like the word rephrasing because it turns the old cogs wheeling round and what's behind that wording. And I'm quite thankful to Karen this afternoon for answering that because it is the new schemes and it is slippage, which I hoped it would be. But what concerned me was that on page 59, 11.2, we talked about a business case, and yet I don't find that business case within this report. It's referred to it, but it's not there. It talks about the risk assessment, and we've got that. But I do believe from what Karen said that a summary of those business cases were discussed at C&E. So I'm quite relieved about that. But I still think there's a case that when you have a business case, members need to know some details, and if there is somewhere on the website or within the system that we could access that, it may be helpful in future to be able to see just how the criteria has been set for setting these business cases. Thank you, Chair.
Karen? Sorry.
Yeah, so I apologise if I misled Councillor Flitter and other members by referring to the business cases in paragraph 3.2. As Councillor Flitter has outlined, it's the usual practice that the business cases go along to the policy committees when the new bids for capital projects are considered. And in this case, the two new bids, the business cases relating to the two new bids that went to Community and Environment Committee were summarised at that meeting in July. And I can certainly look into whether we could make the business cases available to members for future reference.
Thank you, Councillor Hobson.
Thank you, Chair. Two questions, one of which Councillor Burford's already said. At the traveller site meetings, reference has been made to having a couple of £100,000 available to put towards a site. People are not. So, can you tell me where that is in the, please? And so while you're looking at that, Karen, because other people are nodding, it's obviously been said. And my second one, I sort of underlined think you've been on 7.2. This presents a risk in terms of funding availability for future projects, you know, because it's reducing. Is that something that's, you know, we always have this financial risk thing. You're highlighting that to us.
Right, so I'll answer that one first. So I think the risk about future projects is because the amount is only £959,000. It's forecast to be that. In fact, that is better than we have been at some stages in the past, because I'm sure in the past the equivalent figure was in the low 100,000s at one point. So we have managed to, I think the reason it's gone up is that we've been able to attract grant funding and use that, whereas originally we thought we'd have to use our own funding. On the point about the reserve for the Egyptian Traveller site, I'll have to come back to you with a written reply, but I think where that has come from is when we reported about the underspend, either for the previous year or the current year, I think it was agreed that some money from that would be allocated into a reserve for Egyptian Traveller site, but I'll have to come back to you with a full reply.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you if you could confirm that to all the councillors, because I think that's all our view, that is there somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hobson. Councillor Dobbs.
A very quick one. There are people who love to see where S106 goes to. Just reassure me that in para 210, where it says an underspend of S106 of 139,000 approximately, will go back to reserves. That's presumably S106 reserves, so it's still earmarked S106. It's still got that tag, and people can track it through should they wish.
Yes, that's right. We do keep specific reserves for Section 106 contributions because, as you're aware, they have to be used for specific purposes at specific sites in some cases.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. Karen will probably groan at this question. I'm going to ask her again because I ask it many times. Karen, you quite rightly make the point about the paucity of future capital reserves, and you say that the council will need to consider the possibility of borrowing. Do you not think it would be more helpful if we considered the possibility of borrowing on each capital scheme rather than leave it until we don't have any money left?
The SIP for guidance requires us to consider the need for borrowing as a whole. Well, I agree with it's kind of conflicting because we're supposed to consider the need for it as a whole, which is why capital programme financing comes to council and it's not left to the policy committees. But in saying it must be considered as a whole, if we want to borrow, we would be expected to make sure it's affordable. So in doing that, we would want to look at the reasons for borrowing and make sure that any scheme that we're borrowing for would generate sufficient return to make any repayments affordable. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. I have nobody else to ask. Councillor G.
Yeah, just a quick one. I've noticed Bakewell does appear in this list in terms of replenishing the riverbanks, but I'd like the council to give consideration to Bakewell in the future because we need some money spending on the park and the tennis courts and things like that. The cricket pavilion might get washed away in the river one day, so maybe it could get slightly closer to the top of the list.
Thank you. Well, I think I've got nobody else left to speak now. So would anybody like to move? Councillor Wilton?
Could I move this, please, if I may? And thank you, Karen, for an excellent report.
Thank you. Does that find a Councillor Buttle?
Seconding.
Thank you. So it's been moved, it's been seconded. We're going to debate. Does anybody wish to raise anything on debate? Thank you. No. So we'll move to the vote. All those in favour of accepting the 6 recommendations from the capital programme update? Anybody against, please? Any abstentions? I cast that as moved unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item number 11, which is the Disabled Facilities Grants paper. And I'm going to ask Amanda to present this. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, in terms of disabled facilities grants, it isn't something that we would normally bring to this forum for discussion in particular. It would normally go to the business of the Community and Environment Committee. However, a matter has surfaced in the spring of this year that means we do need to, with some urgency, respond to a consultation from the County Council, which deals with our disabled facilities grant side of things. For those members who aren't aware, the delivery of disabled facilities grants, or the administration of that, sits with the local authority. So members of my team in the Public Health and Housing team are the face of the council, dealing with clients, ensuring that those works are fit for purpose from that perspective. But it links in with the County Council in terms of the referral mechanism which people go to in the first instance. As part of our delivery mechanism at the moment, we utilise the disability design team at the county, not for all disabled facilities grants, but for some, in terms of architectural drawings, in terms of managing contractors, in terms of clerks of works, and actually signing them off against drawings for those adaptations for our vulnerable residents in the district. In the spring of this year, a vulnerability around the future of that disability design team surfaced. In terms of, as we were all very familiar with the challenges that the County Council are facing, and it's not unsurprising that they are horizon scanning and looking what they do, how they do it, do they need to do it, is it statutory or non-statutory? And unfortunately, the disability design team, and we can use the acronym DDT, is seen to be a non-statutory function. In terms of that, they need to look at whether they want to choose to continue in the vein that they do at the moment, which is subsidised by the County Council, and that's the equivalent of about 23 full-time equivalent members of staff who only do disability design across the county for at least 6 authorities. So we're not in this alone. So it is part of what we do. And as part of that, there has been an options paper put forwards. There's been discussions, obviously, and expressions of concern by officers like myself and obviously team members in terms of the future of this and the vulnerability. And at Appendix 2 to this report, you've been given the paper that the County Council considered. And there was a decision made to go out to consultation fairly promptly. That consultation finishes tomorrow. Hence, that's why we're here today. And there are 3 options identified in that consultation. The one is that it continues, the DDT continues in some form. However, that will be on a cost recovery basis for those who use that facility. At present, we pay a 10% fee, an agency fee, on all disabled facilities grants that we provide as a local authority. The maximum grant for each recipient being £30,000, and that comes from our Better Care Fund monies. And the second option is that there'll be very much a pared down version, which will only cover the statutory functions of the County Council. So those grants that exceed the 30,000, and we look towards the county to top up that, because some disabled facilities grants can be quite complex and deal with extensions to properties. They are looking to actually pare that right back to only provide a disability design function for those complex cases. And they are a minority of the churn of DFGs that come through as a local authority, and they're a very small percentage. In terms of the third option, the county are looking to go out to the market, so no longer have a DDT, and then procure services externally. And then we, local authorities could conceivably buy into that service if they wish to. So they're the 3 options that are part of the consultation. It is a grave concern, and we've put, there's a draft response to those different options at Appendix 1, and that's for members to consider. what I would say is, irrespective of how this plays out, and that sort of potential end date is the 31st of March next year, which is pretty damn close, is that DFGs per item or per grant will cost us more money going forwards, irrespective. And obviously we only have a certain pot of money, so that will conceivably be less delivery on the ground in terms of numbers of DFG for some of the most vulnerable residents. And for your information, disabled facilities grants is a first intervention for vulnerable residents to allow them to remain independent and remain in their own home. So that's highly valued by those individuals. And it's something that we excel at as a local authority, and that is, predecessors have really championed that. We're in the highest sort of percentile of local authorities in terms of our delivery time, the top 19% in the country. So we're very precious about this, but it comes back to what we can deliver for our residents on the ground, and we're concerned about that vulnerability. In terms of the options, clearly we can look beyond and look at our own provision, and that will be part of an options paper coming forwards, and that would, what we're saying through the recommendations, that would go back to the Community Environment Committee. So that's another piece of work. But the crucial thing at the moment is actually responding to the consultation by tomorrow, which, say, the draft is there for you to consider. So the three recommendations that we've cited in the report are to consider the representations that are before you, that are draft. Obviously we need to decide. To be aware that an options paper will be looked at in the full round, and not just the provision that the County Council are proposing. Two other local authorities actually use their own design service and have a management aspect around that as well. So there are other things out there in the market, but just to flag that isn't part of this sort of point of focus at the moment, but that will be in due course, because obviously we haven't got an awful lot of time. And also, I would say, to recognise that will go back to the Community Environment Committee. What I would stress is that there are ongoing discussions from people like myself with county representatives. Obviously they're aware of the sensitivity around it and the potential cliff edge of the 31st of March, and nobody wants that. So there is still some healthy discussion around that, but obviously we need to have our focus mainly on the consultation. So that concludes my introduction to the report. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Buttle.
I'm sorry for being persistent and constantly going on in the corner here, but this one really does matter. I have a resident who has a dreadfully disabled child. Really is. She's in a really difficult position, and we have been waiting since May for their conversion of their home to be signed off by a Derbyshire County Council director. We just don't know how it's going to be moved forward, and it's an awful position they're in, and whichever solution that we can come up with, I really would like us to get on with it, because it's a very difficult position to be in.
Councillor Maelstrom.
There was a question, yes, I meant to ask a question. The question was, which one of these options would you think would be the most? I'd like you to put forward the option that's going to help my resident. Don't know which one should I be going for here.
It's obviously for you to decide, but I think in terms of we need to remember that this element is only part of that journey for that particular client and their family. The disability design team is part of a wider process in terms of the referral mechanism, in terms of the occupational therapist input, so there's an awful lot around it. What I would say is the amount of time that they actually sit on our desk is incredibly short. We're only part of that journey. We also, as people on the ground, have stressed to the county that there are other matters in that sausage machine that need looking at. And we're happy to have that conversation around it, because it's just sort of looking at one particular segment of that. So that is being recognised, but it is purely just on this option. I think from a professional officer perspective, obviously a critical mass to support some kind of retention would be a possible option. less disruptive. But clearly we need to look at this in the round, because we don't know how long, even if there were a pared down version, what the timeline of commitment would be to that. So we just need to, again, it comes back to the option paper and us sort of taking ownership of that and looking at what that means for us as a local authority. So that's a wider paper that would come, as I say, to C&E.
Thank you. Councillor Maelstrom, question?
Thank you. Yes, I see from the draft response to the consultation that you seem to have gone for option one as the least worst of the three, and that you only disagree with it rather than strongly disagreeing with it. On option one, if implemented, would that stop us from using third-party agents where we can?
We have used other options previously. We used to have a twin track, I have to be very careful how to say that, approach where we actually put some aspects through the county council DDT, and we had Metropolitan, which we were working with as well, but that was we were encouraged to pull away from that. I think we need to, as I say, take ownership of that and decide what that looks like for us. So we don't know what the outcome will be from the county. We won't know that until sort of Christmas time into the new year. But you know, it's in our gift as to what we wish to do on that front.
Thank you. Councillor Dobbs.
Did I have a question? This question? I don't have a question, sorry.
I thought you put your hand up.
Not knowingly.
Councillor O'Brien then, please.
Thank you, Chair. Amanda, to help me think through my views on the options, can you help me with two questions? On option one, is it implied here that it's likely that the 10% fee, which is currently charged, is likely to rise significantly above 10%? Is that the implication of option one? And secondly, is there an appetite amongst the Derbyshire authorities, district authorities collectively, to look at collaborating and negotiating some sort of framework agreement with an external organisation?
I think in terms of the percentage, I think that's an unknown quantity at the moment, and that's part of the response, in that we're not sure how that's going to crystallise, and that's part of a discussion. If there are 6 local authorities, obviously if we're standing side by side with Erewash or Amber Valley, that's a difficult sort of population and different sort of traffic going through that mechanism if they choose to use it. So that's still a discussion to be had. We did previously pay 5% as on all grants to the agency, and that was collectively agreed that would go to 10% at the start of this financial year. So I can't tell you categorically what that would look like in terms of that bit of the pie that we'd need to pick off. As I say, that's an unknown quantity. I think in terms of appetite, I wouldn't say that there is a strong view either way. I think in terms of the value of what we have at the moment and the relationships that those local authorities that use DDT on a regular basis have is something they would like to safeguard, but not at any cost. So that, you know, everyone needs to look at their own sort of demands and capabilities, and really sort of a wider focus. So I would say it's healthy discussion. And there is a want to engage, but also there is also some concerns around that wider delivery mechanism that Councillor Buttle's already touched on, that it's not just this in isolation.
But just to go back to the point on the 10%, presumably the reason that the county council are considering cutting it is it's not meeting its costs, and if it's currently 10% and not meeting its costs, that to me says, for that option to work and it meet its costs, it would have to rise above 10%. Is that not a reasonable assumption?
It is a reasonable assumption. but we're trying to mitigate that as much as possible. I think in terms of the discussions that we've had, it's identifying where there is still a need from the county council to actually understand the value of DDT, and that is expressed through the draft response. They don't stand in isolation, they are an important part of the delivery mechanism at county as well for colleagues to interact with, so it's trying to get that message across as well, which is something that all colleagues across the county recognise and are trying to communicate.
Thank you. Councillor Buckler.
Yeah, my questions are sort of similar to that, really. Do DCC do this as a representative of the district and borough council? So is this effectively a partnership of those 6 district and borough councils, or are they doing it because it's something that they've historically done? You know, so is there a mechanism for that partnership to continue, whether DCC do it or not?
In terms of my knowledge of the history of it, it is something that has grown over time in terms of a consistency of approach that Derbyshire County Council were committed to, and obviously they were a more healthier time, so it has put that spotlight on it. I suppose that the thing that is of concern is the timeline that we're looking at. You know, nothing's out of, you know, sort of the options for other local authorities, but you obviously need to look at what that means in terms of critical mass. We have experience of that through the building control, you know, sort of capabilities that we're part of, but obviously that takes some time. And the other message that is conveyed through our consultation, I'm sure will be through colleagues, is that we need a time extension to put other matters in place, if indeed that is a pared down version of the provision at the county council, and some agreement on that, and also around how that looks in terms of fees and charges for all of us. So that is an ongoing discussion. So I'm not saying there isn't appetite, but obviously we need to look at the very immediate future as to how that is. At the moment, we have a service level agreement with the county council to provide that on our behalf. Not all district councils are part of that. High Peak are not part of that. They use a different company in conjunction with Staffordshire Moorlands, but that's in very recent times. But again, we have those discussions. We look at, you know, all the options on the table.
Thank you. I'm mindful of the time moving on, but Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. I got 2 questions really. I mean, the first is to understand the process. As I understand it, somebody would go to the county council to request a change, some support in adapting their house or build their dwelling, and then the county council would do the design work at the moment, and then come to us to implement that. Is that correct?
The applicant would go to the county in the first place. That would actually be assessed in terms of need, so that you would have other health professionals involved in that process. And our sort of involvement kicks in when a referral comes to us as the local authority for that resident that lives in our area. And also, as part of that process, the DDT are commissioned to get involved in that. Not all adaptations, because a stair lift or a level access shower doesn't need the same detail as an extension to a property. So that's where they lock in terms of that process, and we deal with them in terms of correspondence around that particular piece of work on the ground in terms of that adaptation.
So we go back to the county council to ask them to do the design work once we've been
it's sort of commissioned in parallel with this, because there's OT you know, input into that as well. But obviously, when it comes to us, it is calculated as a grant based on a design for that particular individual's needs.
Understood. Okay, thank you for that. That's very helpful. The other question is really, we were using an external party up till a few months ago, well, a year or so ago, and then we moved to the county council in 2023, and subsequently they've now decided they don't really want to offer the service anymore. Is that correct?
I think it's part of that horizon scanning and looking at what they need to do and how they need to do it, and it's deemed a discretionary service from that perspective.
Understood. So, in the third option, you point to a problem of disconnect between the designer of the changes to the building and and the social services and others that would be. In the past, have you found that that was a problem, or when we were using an external agency, or?
We used an external agency for the more simple adaptations, but which would go down that route, because there were some issues of actually sort of realisation times that we weren't overly happy with, a predecessor, we took that option to go down that route, which was very successful for us. So I think it's a bit of pill now in terms of looking at it. But in terms of capabilities, it would have to be a more enhanced capabilities for some of the matters that we will be dealing with.
Okay, right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. I've nobody else down to ask questions. Would anybody like to move it? Councillor Flitter.
Yes, Chair. I realise how important this subject this is, and I've got lots of views which I wasn't going to bore members tonight. But realising that this is a vital piece of work in a design and build team, and the way we go about it, and as Councillor Melstrom rightly put, we're dealing with the best of a bad job. And it disappoints me. I do have concerns about how we retain those properties that are developed for people with needs, because sometimes I can remember going back 40 years on a housing committee talking about the houses that were blighted by things like this being done to the property, but those people needed those facilities. And they may not last forever, but they are very, very important. So I have pleasure in moving this report and accepting the recommendation of option one has been the best of a bad job.
Thank you. Does that find a seconder? Councillor Hughes, you were quickest on this one.
I'd like to second this. I recognise the real problems that the County Council has in doing discretionary bits of work, given the austerity that particularly county councils have faced, given the 14 years of Conservative cutbacks in local authorities. And we see it coming home to roost now in cutting back all sorts of services that the County Council used to provide extremely well, and is now finding it impossible to deliver. So I feel very sorry for the poor councillors and officers in the County Council who are faced with the difficult decisions that they're having to make. And I feel that we have to in what we do, we have to show some sympathy for them and accept that they will not be able to provide all the services that we would hope that they would provide. And but I also would commend this report, and particularly the analysis of the three different options, and particularly the points made about option 3, where the loss of continuity between design and the the specification of requirements will surely lead to some problems in the future. So I fully accept this report and the analysis, the excellent analysis that has gone into it.
Thank you. So it's been moved and it's been seconded. Is there anybody who wishes to speak in debate? Nobody. So we'll move to the vote. All those in favour of accepting the three recommendations? Anybody against, please? Any abstentions? No, that's moved unanimously. Thank you. We will move on to agenda item 12, which is the planning appeal costs of Lees Farm, Wyreston, Ashbourne. Mr Robson isn't available, but Mr Capes is going to present this report. Thank you.
Chair, thank you. Very briefly, in fact, the figures for the Wyreston Road appeal are as set out in the report, and they do total £181,619.40, and council is requested to make available the supplementary revenue budget accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions, please? Councillor Dobbs.
Thank you, Chair. I was assuming Sean would be here, but I'm sure Steve can answer this. Could you just confirm, two linked questions to start with, that it was the appellant who requested in their initial application that the appeal be held as a public inquiry? And second, if you could give an indication of the relative costs of a public inquiry as opposed to a hearing. And I've got a third question, but I'll come back to that.
Chair, thank you. Yes, it was the appellant who requested this be held as a public inquiry, as opposed to an informal hearing, or indeed by written representations, and indeed that does come at greater expense to a large extent due to the need to involve counsel and technical experts, which are involved to a lesser extent in other appeal mechanisms. The exact figures I can't put on them though.
And thirdly, and kind of related, can you give an indication of what we might have had to pay in costs to the appellant if we simply chosen not to defend any of the reasons for refusal?
That's difficult to say, Chair, because if we'd not defended any of it, in a sense the cost of the appeal would have been relatively short. The number of hours and days that they had to spend getting people sitting in front of the inspector, and indeed the number of hours and days that we had to spend getting people sitting in front of the inspector would have been considerably less. Having said that, they might have incurred other costs which they would have then chosen to pass on to us. It's planning appeals are a costly business. I think probably more than anything else that's what this says, Chair.
Thank you. Any more questions? Oh, Councillor Hobson.
We're talking a lot of money here, a lot of money that could be used for other things, and I just wonder if somebody's prepared to say what we can learn going forwards, because we cannot keep spending this money every year. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to ask a question? Thank you. Well, it was. But if you want to ask the question, I don't think anybody out there is going to answer. But if you direct it to Sean, maybe, or Steve can.
The answer I can give, Chair, is that members have got planning training booked on the 15th to 16th of October with a PAS trainer, and probably that trainer will be the best person to ask that question of. But I think the risks and pros and cons can be delved into more there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hobson. No more questions. Would anybody like to move this? Councillor Dobbs?
I'm happy to move that, Chair. Can I say my bit at this point? Is that okay? Do I need a seconder first?
You can say whatever you wish, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to propose these three recommendations, not because I regard these as insignificant sums, but because robustly defending decisions that are democratically made by a planning committee should be taken as consequential to the existence of that committee. The matter of costs in this particular lost appeal have been discussed at a recent planning meeting, and I welcome the cross-party comments made then, and I hope that the same spirit will prevail today. I can assure members who are not on the planning committee that we do take the consequence of our decisions very seriously. The independence of the planning committee must be cherished. This is a key point of democratic input. The ability of members of the public to make comments at a planning committee meeting is a vital part of that. Of course, officer recommendations must be taken extremely seriously by members of the planning committee. However, unless they are able to take account of comments by members of the public at these meetings, then such public participation would appear pointless. Clearly, this council does need a policy to govern situations where planning officers and committee members come to different conclusions, and I understand that this matter is in hand. In the meantime, we need to be prepared to defend our decisions that have gone to appeal, and that includes ones that are both in accordance with and against officer recommendations. This will require funding, and that is what these recommendations seek to provide. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Burford, you had your hand up.
I'm prepared to second this, Chair, and in seconding it, absolutely, totally agree with what Councillor Dobbs has just said. I think we need to bear in mind when we are discussing this that the decision to refuse this application in December 2023 was made by the Planning Committee, having debated it thoroughly and in great depth. It wasn't a decision that was taken lightly. I do commend Councillor Dobbs for, you know, putting his head above the parapet. He and Councillor Archer were prepared to stick the necks out and say lots of the things that many of us on all sides on that planning committee were thinking. So I do commend him for having the guts really to go to this what do we call it, a planning inquiry, to defend the decision that was made by those of us on the planning committee who voted to refuse this planning application on what we considered, and I think those of us who did vote against this, against officer advice, did so because we took into account all material planning considerations. I've always said planning is not a science. There has to be some amount of discretion and debate about whether we go along with officer recommendation or not. On this occasion we decided, or the majority of us decided not to, and whether we say we've paid the price for that, I don't know, but I want to think that the planning committee is there to discuss the application in depth, taking into account the officer recommendation. But to be honest, if we go along with officer recommendation all the time, what's the point of the planning committee?
Thank you, Councillor Burford. It's been moved and it's been seconded, so we can now enter debate. Councillor Maelstrom, did you want to say something, please?
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to briefly observe that in deciding whether to award our opponent effectively their costs of the appeal, the planning inspector found that the decisions that we had made and the reasons that we had put forward did not constitute unreasonable behaviour by the planning committee, and I'd just refer members in particular to paragraph 120 of the agenda pack where they, the cost decision is summarised.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to back and agree totally with Councillor Dodds and Burford. We don't take these decisions lightly. We all know that. I mean, we must have debated this particular application for the best part of a couple of hours. And, you know, we saw evidence, photographs that people had provided. We went on site visits, you know. I do sometimes wonder why we're on the planning committee. We make the decisions for all the right reasons, and we've lost a couple of appeals recently. I suspect there'll be others coming. We could be an endangered species on the planning committee, because some of us will probably be worried about actually being on there, and this sort of exposure to financial cost we're exposing the council to. I know Sean did say to us on one occasion, no, you're making the right decisions, you know, in the sense that, you know, don't be put off by making the decisions you believe in. But it does make you wonder, £180,000, that's a lot of money. Yeah, we just have to be so careful going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor G.
Yeah, I've listened to this, and I think we have to be very careful here, because, you know, you could get delirious in the romance of the planning committee, because the reality is, if you just don't listen to your own officers and their advice with something like this, and you expect to go to an appeal against these type of companies with the resources they've got behind them, it is sort of futile and absurd, and this council can't afford it. You know, we just cannot afford, you know, so I accept that the planning committee is doing its job and thinking the right things, but the planning officers are the people who are qualified and can understand it in a better way. So I'm sorry about that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Linthwaite. We're in debate.
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking forward to the training on the 15th and 16th of October. My observations, my first planning committee is on the 8th, are that we're in a very difficult position here. The only people who are ultimately responsible for the decisions made by those planning committees are the councillors sitting on them, not the officers, and absolutely not the planning inspectors. And we are the only ones who are responsible to our electorate. So it's very difficult, but I completely back the fact that sometimes you have to put your money where your mouth is, and our electorate won't thank us to do otherwise.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lees.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, totally agree with Councillor Dobbs and Councillor Burford. Very difficult decisions we have to make on the planning committee. Very unfortunate that this was an expensive one, but if you look back on the history on appeals, this council comes out pretty good on appeals. We do win quite a few of the appeals. We can't always get it right, but it's common sense, and site visits are a very important part of this, and listening to our residents as well, which the inspectorate doesn't seem to take into account. So I totally agree with what's been said and full agreement of it.
Thank you. Councillor Boynton.
I just want to assure councillors not on the planning committee that these decisions aren't made on a whim, and that they're made with consideration of the policies in place, that should an appeal come, as it has done this time, then we stand a very good chance of not losing the appeal. Unfortunately, on this occasion, we have, and it's cost us, but it's important that we do stand up for what we believe in, and maybe the training coming in the near future will help reduce some of the risk factors with that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Boynton. Well, it's been moved, it's been seconded. Does anybody want to speak any more in debate? If we're not, we'll move to a vote. All those in favour of accepting the three recommendations? Have we got any against? Any abstentions? No, that's fine. So that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Now I'm pondering here at 24 minutes past whether to go for the first item or whether I ask for an extension to 9 o'clock. There's two more items, and I think they're going to be quite short items. So if I move that we extend the meeting by half an hour to 9 o'clock, would anybody second that, please? Yeah. Councillor Lees, and all those in favour to extend? Thank you very much. Any?
Chair, I have a 5-minute comfort break. Sorry.
Go on then. Well, we'll have a 5-minute comfort break because we don't want any accidents, Councillor Murphy. And we'll be back here. Please be back here by past, and then we'll bat on. Thank you. Are we happy? Put your hand up if you're not here. That's good. Thank you. We'll move on now, please, if we may, to agenda item 13, the recruitment of the Director of Governance and Corporate, and Paul's going to present this one. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. The report informs members of some recent staffing changes within the organisation, and there are two specific recommendations proposed. The first is to seek a supplementary revenue budget approval for the current financial year to enable the appointment and conclusion of the executive research campaign, which is currently underway. And the second request is again for a further supplementary revenue budget to provide interim resources. There is one amendment I wish to make to the report, Chair, for the purposes of clarity. Given the fact that the District Council currently has a designated monitoring officer, and that individual will remain the Council's monitoring officer until the end of October, for the purposes of clarity and accuracy, I would like to amend all references to interim monitoring officer to interim corporate legal resources. Nothing further to add to the report, Chair.
Right, thank you. Has anybody got any questions, please? Has anybody got any questions, please? No? Would anybody like to move this? Councillor Hughes?
Yes, Chair, I'd move the recommendations in agenda item 13.
Is that find a seconder? Councillor Wilton? Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak in debate? We'll now move to the vote. All those in favour of accepting the two recommendations with the alteration as the Chief Executive mentioned. Anybody against, please? Any abstentions? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll come to the final item on the agenda, and this is the appointment of the Monitor Officer. It's Paul Wilson again. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. As with the previous report, the current Director of Corporate and Customer Services is the Council's designated monitoring officer, and she will remain so until the 31st of October. I would like to propose one amendment to this report to again improve the clarity of that situation, and I would like to delete all references to the 26th of September in the report and amend that to the 1st of November 2024.
Thank you, Paul. Any questions, please? No questions. Would anybody like to move this? Councillor Linthwaite. Does that find a seconder? Councillor Martin Burford. So it's been moved and it's been seconded. Anybody wish to speak in debate? Councillor G.
Just one quick question. Well, it's not a question, it's a comment. Could I make sure that the council is giving some time to looking at our rising stars underneath to make sure somebody could actually rise to the top into one of these roles in the future?
Paul?
Thank you, Chair. In response, members of the Scrutiny Committee have recently considered a report, and one of the aspects of that does actually look at developing talent in-house in order that we can provide clear routes to progression. So that is very much the intention.
All those in favour of accepting the single recommendation? Do we have any against? Any abstentions? That's carried unanimously. And that ends this evening's business. So thank you very much and have a very safe journey home. Thank you.